Awesome. So we've just got Andrew here. He's a qualified podiatrist. He's who I send all my clients to if they have any problems below their hip. So if they have any feet problems, knee, ankle, up to the hip, he's the person I really send them to. So just going to run through the different types of footwear and some variations and the best type of shoes to squat or deadlift in.
Okay, so shoes are really important. There's lots of different shoes these days. So they vary from everything from barefoot technology, which doesn't have any control into it, to ones with a lot of support through the medial or the inside of your foot to give you lots of control. Now, there's a difference between cross-training shoes and running shoes and then weightlifting shoes. So what we're actually looking for in a running shoe is a shoe that's actually going to give you some support during your running, either cushion or support. And they vary into a neutral shoe or a support shoe, depending on your foot type. Now they're best to get fitted by either a podiatrist or an actual a shoe shop that has some footwear technology like the athlete's foot or something like that. Yeah. And they range into shoes that obviously have more flex through them like this or less flex through here. So what you're really looking for, if you're looking at this as a left foot, a support shoe would have more support, and this is the sort of shoe you would have if you're getting some shin pain or some knee pain through the sides of the knees. Yeah. Very important that you get the right one there and you don't get the wrong shoe. Yeah, sure. When you go to something like a neutral shoe or a very much shoe with no support, they're good for basically everyone. So when in doubt, choose a neutral cushion shoe. Now the other thing we've got to look at is some of these free type shoes. Now these are quite popular on the gym floor, as you would have seen. These are not too bad for the gym floor. They actually work your feet muscles a little bit, but not something to be used all the time in all your training sessions. It's just like you doing your deadlifts or something like that. To train a particular muscle group, you don't always use the same exercise. So very important when you're choosing those free shoes or the ones that are meant to mimic barefoot, that we use them in the prescribed way. So not too often, but then not for long runs and things like that. So fine for a little bit on the gym floor. They're probably not a good shoe to do any heavy lifting in as well. What you want for a heavy lifting shoe is something that's going to be a very firm, flat base to keep you very stable when you're on the ground. What you probably want is a slight pitch in the shoe too. So what a pitch means is that the heel is higher than the forefoot. Now, there's a couple of things with that that's important, particularly with the weight lift, is as we do a weight lift, we actually want to be pushing up through the heels, and you don't want to be grabbing the ground with your toes. Quite often you'll feel if you're doing a lift like this, you'll feel that as the weight pulls you forward a little bit with a squat or something, you'll actually pull your toes to try and drag yourself up. What we'd like to see, and we quite often look at this with force plates underneath your feet, is that the weight's not rocking back and forth from heel to toe and heel to toe. We want it very, very steady. We want it right in the middle. So if your legs are apart, we want your center of gravity to be sitting in the middle, and we don't want to vary too much back and forward from that. What happens if we go too much back and forward is we can put a lot of strain on the lower, through the erector spina and through down in your lumbar spine. And if we then push back too far like this, you end up getting a curve back, and you can put some really hyperextension on your spine and put some real damaging forces down into the lower sacrum. Now with that, so that's where a lifting shoe comes into play, and it's very, very useful. What it does is it actually sits you like so, and it puts you up a little bit. So you actually, when you're pushing up, it makes it a little bit easier for us with really tight hamstrings, and you can actually push through quite solidly up and down. Your best guy to look at the technique is someone like Cody, but then to look at your footwear and things like that, seek an actual professional to look at it. When you're looking at a running shoe as opposed to that, you'll see the running shoe, you'll be able to do this more with. A lifting shoe, you won't be able to do that. Also, the running shoes will have quite a large pitch here, but they'll equally have quite a thick forefoot as well. Whereas a more barefoot shoe will be very flat and have nothing in it, but it'll be very, very flexible. So there's some little tips for you on shoes.
All right, so we're just going to run through a conventional deadlift here.
Okay, so from our perspective, from our perspective, a deadlift here for the person with, and we're looking at lower limb structures here. So we're looking at knee flexion and extension, ankle range of motion. So we're looking at ankle range of motion, knee flexion and extension here, but also through your actual lower back. And that's really, really important as you come up through this part here to be able to sit back into it and pull up as he pulls up. And there's a nice easy movement. So there's not a lot of movement, so the knees aren't coming well forward over the feet. They're not too far forward, and he's not having to arch or bend his back over. So very useful for someone who's quite flexible and perhaps has done some training, and not for those who are only just beginning and who aren't used to having weight. You should go very, very light on that. Okay, So the variation of this is for someone who is actually very, very tight through the hamstrings here. And what this allows the weightlifter to do, or the person doing the exercise, is to be able to get down deep into it. So if we look at here, he's able to really get some here, where he has got some more flexibility, and he's able to keep this nice and short on this side, and there's a less angle on the back. So there's less importance to really push and pull down. So as he goes up, the knees are able to straighten out without having to have too much frontal plane movement. So he makes a much easier lift. So very, very important for people who might be just starting out, people with some lower back injuries, like perhaps some disc injuries, or who are very tight through the hamstrings and the gluteals. Okay, so when he's doing the squat here, it's actually reducing a lot of the tension across your Achilles here, so through your gastrocs here, and we're actually allowing the hamstrings to be a little bit shorter. So we're allowing the hamstrings to be a little shorter, and we're allowing the less tension to be put on the gastrocnemius, which crosses the back of the knee here. So it crosses the knee joint and the ankle joint. So by reducing the length of that and then reducing this here, we actually create an easier squat. So as he goes down, he's less likely to have to pull himself, or his muscles are less likely going to pull him around, and he's then able to do a nice deep squat without having to put too much what we call frontal plane motion, so move around too much in that. Okay, so then when he does the regular one here, you'll see him here, he actually has to have a lot more flexibility in these, because what he's done as he comes up, as he comes down, you'll see the distance from here to here now is a lot longer, and the same here. So as soon as he goes up on these little blocks, his knee bends slightly here, and we get a reduction in the length of these two here, which then allows him to actually create an easier pull. So once again, if you've got tightness in your hamstrings, or up here in your glutes, or down here through this muscle called the gastrocs, get yourself up on one of these, and again, have the right technique until you're able to be flexible enough to do them.